Dear cruel world, I'm sorry for everything. Many people don't leave a note at all. Maybe it's because they want to hurry before they change their mind. Others will scrawl a short phrase, a sort of bumper sticker suicide note. Others will write a longer text. But the real message behind every suicide note, the system has failed me. And that is especially true when the victim, yes, victim, is a teenager. I'm a teenager. Each day, 5 students commit suicide. Suicide is the second leading cause of death amongst our high schoolers today, and it is entirely preventable. Suicide is not always a rapid outcome, but rather a sad ending to an impossible ordeal. We need to take advantage of the fact that over 90% of those who commit suicide show the signs beforehand. It is especially pertinent because high school is designed to be stressful, by throwing together young people whose emotions and intellect are still developing, who haven't developed their sense of self-worth, who are constantly seeking approval from their peers, from their educators, and who exist in both the physical and virtual realms. It is a pressure cooker designed to prepare students for the pressure cooker that life is. And while high school is beneficial for growing minds, those same effects can be catastrophic for minds that haven't developed. And as a suicide prevention advocate, I've seen the lead up, the initial shock, and the aftermath, when the overwhelming consensus was, I wish that I had seen the warning signs. While I feel that the quality of our mental health resources is extremely strong, there are just too many students drowning and too few faculty and administrators to handle such a catastrophic problem. I remember sitting in class one day when someone I knew, someone who always seemed fine, started making comments that didn't seem like jokes anymore. And I noticed it. Other people noticed it. But we hesitated on taking action, not because we didn't care, but rather we were scared that we were overreacting, or worse, that they were going to be judged for acting that way, or we were going to be judged for reacting. That silence, that hesitation is where the system breaks down. And that's exactly why we need to be able to train students to identify what's a joke and what's life-threatening. The awkward linchpin holding together this terrible phenomenon is judgment. Now, I want to emphasize that stress itself is not a bad thing. Our world stops for no one. But the herd mindset we need to break is that stress is normal and it must be endured in silence. And when students do complain, the running joke is often, dude, don't report me to administration, but any program, any movement that is the butt of the joke is inherently not going to be as effective as it possibly can be. And while the intention behind these programs are strong, their potential is unused by a student populace too afraid to use it. Many point to the role of teacher-student dynamic in preventing suicide. But the role of the teacher and student is not always one of equality. In fact, for a student to receive information from a teacher, they have to inherently give a lot of implicit respect to their teacher. But the sad byproduct of that is, students are afraid to be judged by someone who they don't perceive to be their equal. But what happens when they do talk to someone who's their equal? Too many times, they're afraid of talking to someone, they're afraid of talking to a friend because of judgment. Or they're afraid of talking to someone who they have no shared experience with because they can't share their deepest, darkest thoughts to them. It is that very fear of and need for connection that we must utilize to save lives. Thus, the solution might be face-to-face contact with someone you don't know, but someone with shared experience, shared age, shared background, with experience training in mental health and an experience level enough to elevate it, but cannot do anything without the other person's consent. Personal, but comforting. Taking advantage of the fact that no one knows more about teenage social dynamics than teenagers themselves. Taking advantage of the fact that you trust someone who you believe is like you. Now, where does that leave our faculty? Well, for the vast majority of our teachers, helping is the reason that they got into teaching. But their hands are tied. They can't be asked to monitor the irregular behavior or the mental health of the hundreds of students who walk through their doors. It's a recipe for disaster. But I was one of the hundreds who needed their teachers for more than just a lesson. So I pierced the veil, and I talked to my teachers about things personal or academic. And to my slight surprise, but vast appreciation, they did everything in their power to help me. But I know that if I were having suicidal ideations, I would struggle to go to them too. I reached the same catch-22 that too many students reach. That they need connection, they desire connection, but are unable to connect. And though many have pierced that veil, too many of my brethren have not. It's a systemic shortcoming of our education system. This proposed solution could circumvent this hindrance by making equitable mental health a facet of our education system in all aspects of our education system, and reducing the stigma that students have when coordinating with their teachers. Current suicide prevention proposals focus on evaluating suicidal tendencies within yourself. But we can make a pointed effort to teach students about the signs of suicide in their fellow students, thus again reducing the stigma and putting the onus of suicide prevention on not just the administration, but the student body itself. Information can be given via presentations, videos, behavioral analysis, then exposing students to the stressor that they're most familiar with, assessments of their new knowledge. I further propose that we teach students the signs of anxiety, bipolar disorder, depression, mental unwellness, so that they can coordinate with the administration to make sure that no student flips through the cracks. If a student is acting off, making comments that don't seem right, or they notice that someone has cuts on their forearms, they can make sure that there's action before it's too late. The best place to put this would be in health class curriculums, to make sure that potential victims are aware of what is wrong, and to make sure that potential advocates know how to descend the daunting tasks ahead of them. It's a solution that I've tried to pursue through legislation, through a march with 100 teen suicide prevention advocates and politicians in my state capital, through symposia attended by students nationwide, and to advocating to school districts large and small. But I know that the way that we can save lives is by widespread incorporation of suicide prevention into every school district in our nation. The two conflicting realities are that students have tender hearts, but lack the thick skin to protect those tender hearts. And administrators have great compassion, but have their hands tied in preventing suicide. Again, too many have slipped through the cracks, and too many risk slipping through the cracks even further. We must harness our greatest strength, that no one knows more about teen dynamics than teenagers themselves. Indeed, they must be armed with the knowledge to prevent their fellow students from committing suicide. Rather than circumventing or hindering the abilities of administration, they would complement the abilities and make sure that there is no more stigma. It's a slippery slope, and everyone needs to be aware of what's happening. If a suicide is not averted, then we, as stakeholders in the system, have failed in our sacred and solemn duty to protect the future of our youth. No more can the brightest lights fall into the permanent darkness that death is, before it's truly begun. We have administrators, teachers, students who want to see this perpetual problem gone. Let's fix it together. We can't keep waiting for the bomb to go off to ask why it went off. We must preempt the explosion. Thank you.